Here come on back top, here come grooving slowly.
So we get to jump in here for an hour on this Tuesday. We won't do this next Tuesday because that's Christmas Eve. We won't do it the following Tuesday because that's New Year's Eve. And then we'll see what happens into 2025. I get to essentially kind of host the Wayne Larrivee show with Wayne Larrivee, the voice who's sitting right there. Wayne, this is kind of fun for us to get a chance to do this for an hour. And everything is kind of taken shape in the NFC with a ton of variables, but you kind of get the picture of what it is with 3 games left. This is really the first time you get some sense of clarity that if you do this and they do that, this is where you sit. So in the moment, I'll paint the picture. Detroit is the 1 seed at 12-2, but it's precarious. Philadelphia is the winners of the East right now at 12-2. Tampa leads the NFC South at 8-6, and the Rams lead the NFC West at 8-6. So therefore, the top 4 seeds, Detroit will get the bye as it sits today. Philadelphia, Tampa, and the LA Rams would play home games. Minnesota, as it sits now, this is going to change. They would play at the Rams. Green Bay would play at Tampa, and the Commanders would play at Philadelphia as it stands. But, shoot, Wayne, the Packers have been so good and with such a good record, and really the jockeying for position is all going to take place over the final 3 games to see how this is going to lay out.
Yeah, I think it's great. It's been a great race, especially in the NFC North. Everybody has fulfilled the expectations and exceeded in the case of the Vikings. The Bears didn't measure up to what expectations were, and there are a number of reasons for that. It'll be interesting to see what happens as they go forward. But, the Lions, apparently the weight of these injuries is catching up with them. But you know what? Dan Campbell and company aren't going to lay down for anybody.
Yeah, I did you hear his sound when he was on one of the morning radio shows today in Detroit? They couldn't even clean him up. He swore twice in the live interview, and he just said that this is the challenge that they signed up for and that they love this and we're ready to go. But they are the injury, the depth of injuries, because you can sustain a couple and really good rosters can manage a couple. The depth of those injuries, he's going to have one heck of a coaching job in front of him.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. About a month ago, I was thinking this team looks a lot like the 2010 Packers, who are going to patch in these veterans and that type of thing and move on. But the thing in 2010 is after Rodgers got injured, suffered the concussion late in November, their injuries had stabled at that point. They weren't losing people every single week. And so they were able to work the guys they picked up off the streets started to fit in and find their roles. And this team became very cohesive down the stretch. But with the Lions, they keep losing people every week. And that's where nothing has stabilized for them. And that's what makes it very challenging for them.
Wayne, I want to spend a few minutes, Wayne, on who these Green Bay Packers are, and I'm gonna take you back to when you and Billy and I are doing a draft show 2 years ago, and we're talking about who that Packers team was going to be. They had missed the playoffs, and it was going to be the transition to Jordan Love, and you just wonder how that's going to go. And even 6, 7, 8 games into the season a year ago, you're talking about draft position and that this team's going to miss the playoffs in back-to-back years. Brian Gutekunst, through his work with Russ Wolf and then talking about what goes on the coaching staff, Matt LaFleur and company, that changeover, that flip from about 6 weeks into last year to what they have done doesn't happen all that often in the NFL. They were slated for a second straight missed playoff run, yet they found their footing, and look how good they are this year. That transition is really remarkable, and I think the front office deserves a ton of credit.
Yeah, they made good choices. I mean, every front office, you're going to have guys you draft in the first round, they don't pan out. The best front offices have that. But this team has done a great job of putting a roster together and kind of building around that new quarterback they had, and then, adding to it from there. Now, last year, they're the youngest team in the NFL. They're sitting there at about, 3-6, 3-5, 4-6, whatever it was. And you're exactly right. They're not going to the playoffs. There's no way they're going to the playoffs.
Right.
And those young guys said, well, we'll just keep playing. What do we have to lose? We're the youngest team in the NFL. And all of a sudden, things started turning around. The quarterback got real hot. The people around him got much better than they were in the first 10 weeks of the season. They went on a run, and they kind of changed the expectations, because this is my observation, all right? I'm not giving you inside information here that I talked to this guy, and he after 10 or 15 gin and tonics told me that this is where they're going and how they're doing it.
Right.
I'm just telling you what my impression was. You make a decision, you're moving off of Aaron Rodgers, okay? Fine. But it's going to take you 2 years to do that, because you also have David Bakhtiari's monstrous contract, and he can't play anymore. So now you've got 2 contracts you've got to deal with. And there's dead money on the cap, like 70 million, 60 million the next year, whatever it was. So they knew that first year they couldn't do a whole lot. That was last year. They couldn't do a whole lot bringing in free agents and building up this roster of young guys. So the young guys make the playoff run. But the plan was always that, okay, you will add a couple of guys the second year. And then the third year, which is actually next year, that's when we'll add a few more guys. Our young players will be young veterans, and that's when we're going to have our best team. Well, all of that changed in January of last year, actually of this year, when they went on that run of the playoffs. And all of a sudden, even the guys in the front office are looking at each other and say, why can't we make a run this year? Why can't we do it?
Yeah.
We could have knocked off San Francisco, the best team in the league last year. That would have been amazing, and gotten to Detroit. But at any rate, so I think the plan has changed. They didn't come out and say, we've got a 3-year plan and this is how it's going to work. But I think that was logically how it was going to work. And their best team is going to be next year. I still believe that's the case. But the expectation changed on that January run through the playoffs. And all of a sudden, not just for people on the outside, not just for fans, not just for observers like you and me, but for the football people at Lambeau Field, all of a sudden it's wait, these guys are pretty good and they can make a run. They added the 2 free agents who have made a huge difference on this football team, McKinney and Jacobs, and their younger players. This is still the youngest team in the league. The difference between this December and last December is that these young guys have experience. They've been there.
It's 11 months ago, almost to the date of that game in Dallas, when Green Bay goes into North Texas and beats the Cowboys in the playoffs 48-32. You've been around a bunch of surprising and at times dominating wins. I don't know, Wayne, this is my observation. I'm curious as to your thought. That was perhaps one of the most surprising performances that I've ever seen. I thought Green Bay could play with Dallas. I didn't think they could beat them up, and they beat them up. And that was the point at which I'm thinking, well, they can win in Santa Clara against the Niners. They didn't, but they could have. And that this team skipped a step essentially in a retooling, and they're a year ahead of schedule, which is what you were just talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that was one of the biggest. It's not just that they beat the Cowboys and forget about the final score, because that game was essentially over midway through the third quarter. Okay, folks.
Yes.
So all the stuff that Dak Prescott did and all these numbers they put out there, that had nothing to. That meant nothing. Okay. The Packers really hammered them, and boy, that surprised all of us. There's no doubt about that.
And I also thought, when you were talking about the changeover last year, we didn't know that Jordan Love could put a saddle on. And essentially, he put a saddle on, and that team rode his incredible hot streak in the back half of last year, when he won 18 touchdowns and 1 interception. That matches any of the heat streaks that Aaron Rodgers had gone on previous. It matched anything that we had seen Favre do in a single campaign. 18-1 over a 9-game run. It was Jordan Love putting a saddle on, and that's why the Packers paid him. And that's also, I'm going to transition here in a moment into this year, but that's when Brian Gutekunst and attaching his wagon to that proverbial horse in Jordan Love actually took hold.
Yeah, no question about it. And it's remarkable. Controversial draft pick 5 years ago, sat behind an iconic starter for 3 years, gets the reins. It doesn't go, it goes well early. Actually, he got off to a great start. 2 weeks into that season last year, he's leading the league in passing. People think he was awful from the beginning. He was not. Now, the team, went into a tailspin there, and they went a month without winning a football game. But, I remember Brian Gutekunst saying that he thought when he was asked about the quarterback at his mid-season press conference, he said, I think when we get better around him, and he meant these wide receivers and he meant the offensive line, when they get better, he'll get better. Well, they did, and he got a lot better and really stepped to the fore and confirmed everything they had thought when they drafted him.
Wayne, you've seen his transformation this year. He took an injury step, which is what I think it is now. When the injury hit him this year, I think we saw him playing through it, which is great. Toughness. He missed the 2 games. Malik Willis did a fantastic job. But then Love comes back. But he dealt with injuries, and he wasn't 100%. His last 5 games, he's completed 69% of his throws, 8 touchdowns and 1 pick. His last 4 games, it's 7 touchdowns and no interceptions. You think that is health and also, again, getting back into a rhythm, and the game is slowed down for what he sees?
Yeah, I felt, the first, 6-8 weeks, whatever it was, that he never really had a chance to get into a rhythm as a quarterback because the injury at the end of the Philadelphia game. The preseason tells us nothing about these guys. I'm sorry. But in the preseason, he didn't light it up the way Aaron Rodgers used to. He's not that kind of guy, I guess. And so his preseason was okay. The game he played against Philadelphia was okay. He forced a pass down the middle that they intercepted. And then he gets injured. Okay, now he's gone for 2 weeks. Then he comes back. He's trying to play back through that injury. Eventually injures his groin, tries to play through that, can't quite get it done. Malik Willis saves the season, winning 3 games. And, but here we are midway through the season. I'm saying, I don't think Jordan Love has been able to catch a rhythm here. He's not been in consistently enough. And even when he's been in, he's been playing hurt, which compromises. And especially for quarterback, folks, that lower body injury, when you're Mike, this from baseball as a pitcher, you cannot be hurting from your lower body when you're throwing the ball. And he was. And so that led to some inconsistency, some turnovers, and that type of thing. Now, they get the bye week, and he comes back healthy, and I think that's a big part of it. But I also think he's learned a little bit. We thought he came out of last season, knows everything. No, he didn't. I think he still had to go through a learning process, and this is second season. Probably learn more his third season. Belichick said this, and I think he's right. You really don't know on a quarterback after 1 year or even 2 years. 3 years, you have an idea. You know where this guy is going to be, how he's going to play. 3 years, folks. Understand that. Why did the Packers pay Jordan Love? Well, it's just the way the contract broke. You sit him for 3 years. He comes up. They had to pay him, okay? Had to pay him. But you'd rather pay him after he started for 3 years. That's what you'd rather do. But they didn't have that luxury, so they paid him. And I still think that was the right thing to do. And I think he's still evolving as a quarterback. But what we're seeing now at the end of this season is the way he's ramping up as he did a year ago down the stretch. He's understood what he can do with this group, how much he can push the envelope, how many chances he can take, and what kind of chances. And now you're seeing a much more controlled type of passing attack. Still an excellent one, but a passing attack that's not turning the ball over.
So I want to ask you about the evolution of those young receivers that you talked about a year ago, kind of came into the own when they were talking about having the players around him be better. That group, and that's going to be a very interesting contract story for those guys as they play it forward. But that group has really come into their own, and that's the other benefit that Jordan Love has been on the receiving end of, so to speak, pardon the pun, those receivers and his tight end, and we'll get to the running back in our next segment, but those elements have made this quarterback's job a lot easier.
Yeah, and yet, when I was doing the league stats this morning, and I don't think there's a Packer in the top 20 or 30 in catches, maybe top 40 in catches. And even yardage, Jaden Reed's kind of, I think, 20-something or whatever. And they've got these guys, and I'm trying to figure this thing out now, but what I've seen since the bye is that they're going to make sure they get some shots downfield to number 9, Christian. Yeah. They're going to make sure they get shots down there to Christian Watson. And that's one thing. Second thing, they realize that, okay, now that they're doing that, they better not ignore Jaden Reed because he might be their best route runner and their best receiver in the middle of the field. And then when they're in the red zone, nobody they have is better than Romeo Doubs in the red zone. And then the other thing is, but we've also got this tight end who does a lot more than block.
He's all right.
Dangerous weapon down. So and then you get into these games that they've been into. 3 of the last 5 games, they've run less than 60 plays, I believe it is. So now you don't have enough plays to get and I'm trying to figure out, what's the pecking order in this receiving corps? Yeah. I honestly don't know what it is.
Well, and the idea that Luke Musgrave is going to reinsert into the program, and I think Matt LaFleur said last week, I don't know how we're going to use them, right? It's a good problem to have. Yes. Wayne Larrivee is the voice of the Green Bay Packers. When we come back, we'll talk about what the offseason did for them. The 2 most absolute additions that have been home runs, out of the ballpark plays, have been Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney. And we'll talk a little bit about what they have meant and more along the lines of Jeff Hafley and other acquisition in the offseason. We visit with the voice of the Green Bay Packers, Wayne Larrivee, statewide on The Game.
Brian Butch for Iron Jock Performance Apparel. You can't beat the holidays, Christmas and New Year's, cold, snowy weather. Hey, I'm the polar bear. What can I say? Presents, basketball, and did I mention presents? That's where Iron Jock comes in. Here's your chance to get your hands on the most comfortable 4-way stretch, stain wicking, and 0 body odor smelling apparel for 40% off. 40% off. High-end items like quarter zips, hoodies, jogger sweats, and polos. 40% off stocking stuffers like boxers, socks, and short sleeve tees. Here's the deal. Now through December 29th, when you buy $75 or more of Iron Jock, your entire order will go down 40% when you use promo code HOLIDAY40. 40% off now through December 29th with code HOLIDAY40. And shipping is free. Go to ironjock.com for details. That's ironjoc.com. On behalf of myself and Paul Hansen, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, Iron Jock Nation. Thank you for supporting Iron Jock.
Hey, Green Bay fans, if you're like me, you always try to protect the value of your home. It's Mike Heller from The Game for Wisconsin Concrete Coatings. You know we protect our cars from the elements by putting them in the garage, right? But what protects your garage floor from the same elements? Wisconsin Concrete Coatings. They use specialized polyurea coatings, and their team is incredible. They serve Madison and the entire Milwaukee area. Head to wiconcretecoatings.com to book your free estimate. Protect your floor with the Wisconsin Concrete Coatings floor and tell them Mike Heller sent you.
Skip waiting for a table and enjoy a homemade fish fry every Friday at Sendik's. Enjoy 3 pieces of beer-battered Northern Atlantic cod, fried shrimp, walleye fillets, or baked cod. Each include your choice of original potato pancakes or French fries and all the fixings like fresh rye bread, creamy coleslaw, homemade applesauce, and Sendik's tartar sauce. Every Friday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. at your neighborhood Sendik's. Sendik's Food Markets, your trusted local grocer.
Miller High Life. Always flavorful, always refreshing, always at the right price. The champagne of beers. Welcome to the High Life. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Life insurance. Why are you putting it off? Can't afford it? Too much hassle? Think you don't need it? There's lots of excuses for putting off life insurance. But if you weren't there, who would pay the mortgage and other bills? With Ethos, you could be covered in 10 minutes and boom, family protected. Ethos, fast and easy online term life insurance. Up to $2 million in coverage with no medical exam. Some policies as low as $1 a day. Answer a few health questions and get your free quote at checkethos.com. That's checkethos.com.
Coverage varies by plan. View contracts and exclusions at endurancewarranty.com. If you have a 2004 or newer vehicle that's out of warranty or about to be, Endurance is urgently notifying U.S. drivers about their low-cost vehicle coverage plan designed to save drivers thousands on rising vehicle repair costs. Those who qualify can pick their plan, coverage, and repair shop. Roadside service, towing, and rental cars included. All covered repairs get paid directly to the repair shop for you. Call now for your free quote. Call 800-431-8958. That's 800-431-8958. 888.
People can't stop screaming about Screamin' Sicilian frozen pizza. And no wonder. There's plenty to scream about, like the buttery stone-fired crust, secret recipe tomato sauce, mounds of whole milk mozzarella, and tons of premium toppings. Find Screamin' Sicilian in your local grocer's frozen aisle and find out for yourself why Sport called Screamin' Sicilian Holy Pepperoni Frozen Pizza the best of the best. Screamin' Sicilian. Taste what all the screaming is about.
Celebrate the magic of the season with last-minute deals at Target. With up to 50% off toys and video games, you'll save so much while you finish your list. Plus, you'll find incredible deals on clothing, beauty, small appliances, floor care, and so much more. And there are even more ways to save when you join Target Circle for free and get exclusive deals automatically. Hurry to save on gifts before last-minute deals are over. Happier holidays from Target. Restrictions apply.
Oh no, stomach issues again?
Stomach issues?
Who are you?
Your pancreas. I could be the real reason for your diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose oily stools.
I thought it was my stomach.
People often do, but any of these symptoms could mean having a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and speak with your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
People, my people, what's up? This is Questlove. Man, I cannot believe we're already wrapping up another season of Questlove Supreme. We talked to A. Marie, Johnny Marr, Eve, Jonathan Schechter, Billy Porter, and so many more. If you haven't heard these episodes yet, hey, now's your chance. You gotta check them out. Listen to Questlove Supreme on America's #1 podcast network, iHeart. Open your free iHeart app and search Questlove Supreme.
Broadcasting live from the all-new Iron Jock Studios, built by Rima Remodel. Here's Mike Heller on the game.
All right, we continue visiting statewide on the game. Wayne Larrivee, the voice of the Green Bay Packers. My name is Mike Heller. We have 3 weekends of National Football League regular season to play. It probably doesn't go by super fast for you, Wayne, because you're working it every week, and there's a lot of work that goes into prepping for all the games. But I know, as even though I have a role in the pregame show with Dennis Krause and James Jones, that the season flies by. It's hard to believe that there are 3 games remaining. And one of the things that happened in the offseason, a couple of things that happened in the offseason with the Packers a year ago, is the start was with Jeff Hafley, the new defensive coordinator, came in from Boston College. And we didn't know exactly what to expect and didn't know what we would see that would be different about the defense. Before we get to personnel, what have you and Larry noticed, and John Kuhn on the sideline, what have you noticed that is different philosophically to the naked eye about what Jeff Hafley likes to do defensively now?
You know, it's interesting. He's very aggressive in the way he has his linemen and linebackers playing, and then they play zone behind it. And one of the reasons they do that is eyes to the ball. They want eyes on the ball. You play man-to-man. Oftentimes, especially on the perimeter, you're turning your back to the ball and you're covering your man. You're following your man. But he wants eyes to the ball. So it's a very interesting concept to me because, you know, so often the simplicity of defense is, okay, we're going to be aggressive. We're going after the quarterback. We're going to blitz, and so you're in man. You know, and it's not that hard, not that complicated for a quarterback to figure it out. But I see Hafley doing a lot of different things to generate pass rush with his 4-man rush. We're seeing more stunts and loops and that type of thing with the linemen. He's not afraid to blitz his inside linebackers. When you play zone, you're going to have certain parts of the field that are going to be open, and some of that's the middle. In-breaking routes are going to be there very often than not. And when you do see a completion, you hope you have hats to the ball. The biggest thing they've done with this defense is get people to run to the football. I use this quote on the air a lot and during our games. God loves people who run to the football, period. That should be on everybody, in everybody's Bible. So that's what he's gotten them to do. And that's why you have so many fumble recoveries. They're among the league leaders in fumble recoveries this season. That's hats to the ball.
The other 2 big acquisitions, we'll get to the offensive side in a minute, but Xavier McKinney and the difference he has made on this defense and as a controllable young piece in the secondary, his impact on that defense as the captain of that defense is significant.
I agree wholeheartedly with you. He's been one of the greatest defensive upgrades I've seen over the course of time in Green Bay. Just from the standpoint, we all know the interceptions, 7 of them, fumble recovery, 8 takeaways to lead the league. We understand all that. But I think that what we have trouble as laymen understanding is how important he is on the field, whether he's making the tackle or not, especially pre-snap. And you don't have to worry about the back end anymore because they're going to be lined up correctly because of him. You're exactly right. He's the leader of that group. I think he gives them a veteran calmness that they wouldn't otherwise have. And I think he does a lot of intangible things. Now, we've seen the tangible stuff, but intangible things to make that group better. And also, I think really to off the field, I think young guys come out of college, they think they know how to study. And they really don't. How do you look at tape? Charles Woodson was so much a part of the championship team in 2010 because he took, in the years previous to that year, he took a young Nick Collins and Tremont Williams and go on and basically showed that, hey, this is what you're looking for. This is what you need to see and that kind of thing. And that's what McKinney, I think, does with this team.
And then we talk about how this team and maybe their demeanor is viewed differently, and especially on defense, because they weren't considered a speed defensive team and a team that would hit you and rally to the football. God loves people that rally to the football. But it wasn't that way. But guys like Edgerrin Cooper and Quay Walker, who sometimes takes some abuse that I don't think is warranted, these guys have made this defense almost change the way they're defined with speed and some violence and getting to the ball. This was not the Packers defense of 3 years ago.
No, it really wasn't, Mike. And I think what they saw, remember Tampa Bay when they won the championship and the Packers lost twice to them decisively in the regular season and then in that NFC championship game in Lambeau. What you saw were 2 linebackers in the middle of their defense could fly. And I mean, really cover sideline to sideline. When I see that, I think that the Packers at that point in time said, hey, we've got to get more athletic and faster at inside linebacker because that's what it takes to stop offenses in the National Football League today. You've really got to be, it's kind of like baseball. You've got to be built up the middle if you're going to be a good defense. And that's what they went for with first Quay Walker, Edgerrin Cooper, Tyron Hopper. You're not going to see him this year a whole lot outside of special teams. And by the way, he shows up on special teams. But this kid may have more athletic ability than the other 2.
Yeah. And then the other offseason, and it wasn't popular at the time, and I'm sure it wasn't easy, is making a decision on Aaron Jones and then following that decision up by going to get Josh Jacobs. And I don't know, the Packers have had a number of very good running backs over the course of time. Josh Jacobs is right near the top, and I know it's just 1 year so far in Green Bay, and that year is not even complete. But what a great acquisition, and we all loved Aaron Jones, and Aaron Jones can still do great things. Josh Jacobs is different. How do you see that?
He's physical. And Aaron Jones is physical too. Aaron Jones never shied away from going into the middle of the line and getting a tough yard or two. Jacobs' power and physicality, I think, has changed the way people look at the Green Bay Packers, period. Because if you look at the last 30 years, and maybe this is a subtle reason as to why they won 2 Super Bowls and not more in the last 30 years, what were the Packers? They were cutting-edge West Coast offense orchestrated by a first ballot, not second ballot, not third ballot, not Veterans Committee ballot, a first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback. That's what they have always been. Now, what they haven't been is physical. And I mean that, and not that their players didn't want to be physical or play physical, but it was just that they had all this going on offensively, and all the attention was on the quarterback. So the perception is that, they're not physical. And then San Francisco beats them 3 or 4 years in a row, and especially in the playoffs. And they do it with a physicality. Well, that's not going to happen this year because this team has become, over the last year and now this year, become a physical football team. And the reason people, the national reporters and the people outside football who kind of look at the way the Packers play, you know why they think they're physical? Because they see what Josh Jacobs does. And even the other night when he was getting 3 yards a carry, it was a physical 3 yards. So the perception of the team has changed. And I think this is a much more physical, tough football team than we've seen. May not be as good yet as the 2021 team, Aaron Rodgers' last really good year, or the 2010 team, which, again, they felt better playing indoors. The best game they played in the playoffs was in Atlanta. Indoors. And, that's the way they always were. And so I think this team is toughness is what I see in this team. And I really saw it in their last loss. They got beat up in that first quarter in Detroit. They weren't doing anything. And they got up off the mat, and by goodness, midway through the third quarter, they're on the lead in Detroit. So there's no question this is a tough football team that will bode well more than anything else we're talking about in January.
I want to, when we come back for our final segment, I want to talk about the joy of what a team like this brings, not only to its fan base, but also to those who work around it, including you and Larry McCarrion and John Kuhn, because I get it. You're a professional broadcaster, but we all want them to win, and this is fun. There's some joy in Green Bay. We'll visit on that on the other side. That's Wayne Larrivee, the voice of the Green Bay Packers. I'm Mike Heller, and you're listening to us statewide on The Game.
A Sunday victory in Seattle.
Snap to Love, has time, lofts it middle of the end zone for Dobbs. Diving grab, touchdown. Oh, what a play.
Stay with the game all day as we break down the win over the Seahawks.
Imagine trying to take on one of the big car companies. It's not easy. Yet this year, one local law firm finalized the largest compensatory verdict in state history against an automaker, over $38 million. And it was no fluke. That same firm has been holding big car companies accountable for faulty designs that cause injury for over 50 years. Because Wisconsinites know who to call when it's a must-win scenario. They call Habish, Habish & Rotier. National reputation, hometown service.
Sarah Spain for iHeart Women's Sports.
Presented by Capital One.
In college hoops, some movement in the rankings following a couple big matchups last week. UCLA is still locked in at the number 1 spot, but Hannah Hidalgo and Notre Dame climbed 5 spots to number 3, thanks to their big win over Paige Beckers and UConn last week. Speaking of UConn, the Huskies face another tough opponent tonight in Iowa State. That's an 8:30 Eastern tip-off. For more women's sports stories, subscribe to Good Game with Sarah Spain on iHeart Podcasts.
Capital One, founding partner of iHeart Women's Sports Network. With the Capital One Quicksilver card, you can follow your favorite athletes wherever they're playing and earn 1.5% cash back on every purchase. The Quicksilver card by Capital One. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Woo! Sorry about that. This is Armin Saryan, and I just had a slice of Screamin' Sicilian. It's the premium frozen pizza that's so screamin' good. Even just thinking about it, I sometimes, woo! Each Screamin' Sicilian starts with a super buttery crust that was individually rolled. Then, it's topped with a secret recipe tomato sauce, mounds of whole milk mozzarella, and the most toppings you've ever seen on a pizza. Seriously, one bite and you'll understand what all the screaming is about.
Woo! Jackpot!
Sounds like Brian Butch just found out. Find Screamin' Sicilian premium frozen pizza in the freezer at your favorite store. Screamin' Sicilian, it's so screamin' good.
It's a bully that will not let up until you do something about it. And the worst part is that the bullying happens when you're at your most vulnerable. You might as well have your hands tied behind your back while that bully puts one hand over your mouth and pinches your nose with the other. He'll let up, let you catch your breath, and then he'll do it again. Sleep apnea is a bully. Not long ago, we heard our friend John tell you about how his bully was stopping his breathing in his sleep over 145 times an hour. Think about what that can do to your body's organs. It's no wonder that the snowball effects of long-term obstructive sleep apnea are heart disease, stroke, even depression and anxiety. But this problem is solvable, and we have solutions, and you'll be surprised at how simple they are.
To date, Advent has solved over 40,000 breathing triangle problems. It's time to put that bully in his place. Go to adventknows.com to schedule your appointment, because Advent knows. When you breathe well, you live better. Results may vary.
Rick, describe some of our wow Christmas gifts while Sarah and I name the prices and add a little commentary.
Okay. A 1.5 carat total weight diamond bolo bracelet.
Amazingly unique. Just $1,598.
Half carat total weight inside outside diamond hoop earrings.
Just $698.
1 carat total weight is just $898.
A fabulous 3 carat oval created diamond.
But we only have a few of these.
Just $3,998.
A 1 carat total weight created diamond tennis bracelet.
Just $898.
We also have the big 1 carat total weight natural diamond tennis bracelet for just $1,798.
And from now until Christmas, we have 18 months same as cash financing.
With approved credit.
And a delightful gift for you with every purchase of at least $300.
Merry Christmas.
Welcome to Kessler's.
Find the Kesslers nearest you at KesslersDiamonds.com.
Life's a journey, and we're revving up for the ride. Since 1965, Russ Darrow has been the crew in your corner, getting you on the road fast and secure. A voyage of 1,000 miles kicks off with that bold first step. For them, it's always been about navigating you to your destination reliably. They know the significance of a vehicle in a family's life. It supports your daily grind, getting you to work and back, ensuring you can provide for your family. It takes charge as the go-to transport for bonding with friends on road trips. It takes you for victory laps, driving you to sporting events or celebrations after nail biters on the field. And when the need for speed and adrenaline kicks in, it transforms into a thrilling driving experience, providing the ultimate escape on the open road. Being part of those escapades is what fuels their drive. Russ Darrow and the places you'll go. Head to russdarrow.com to explore how they can help you get to your next adventure.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down. Get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad pagel is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
This is the Mike Haller Show.
2 thumbs up.
On the game.
And now I can just podcast them.
All right, our final segment before we hand off to Drew and KB, playing the roles of Drew and KB today will be Hunter Baumgart IV and Tim Scott with Pipe Bomb running the board. You want to talk about a trio of problems right there. Put those three together. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 3 hours.
What could possibly go wrong?
What? Nothing. Yeah. Let me talk about joy. A lot of times, especially broadcasters, and so much of the work that you have done, Wayne, over the years has been as a neutral broadcaster, right? On your Big Ten games and all of that work, neutral. Obviously, the work you've done for teams, it is a different way of calling games. But I know this, that broadcasters, Matt LePay, yourself, and by the way, the Larrivee and LePay podcast out this week, really good stuff. When we talk about the work you do, it's more enjoyable when your teams are good and they're winning. So there is joy, even on the broadcast side. There is joy as to what the Packers are doing right now.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think Larry and I had this discussion toward the end of last year. You know, there's this young team, and they're really intriguing to watch how it's all coming together and building. And, you know, we'd like to see what happens to this team. You know what I mean? This group of players.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, the number one thing when you look at it. And that's what we're trying to do. You know, we're trying to see how this team works out and following him. And you're right, Mike. It's always better when the team wins. Nobody has ever said to me when the Packers lost a game, boy, that was a good broadcast. No one. Yeah. It's never happened, and I don't think it ever will. And you know what? The best broadcasts we have are when the Packers win, and there's a reason for that because we're happier too on the air.
Yeah, and the industry is different, right? Those who are writing, the guys like Matt Schneidman and those who Rob Domofsky, they're not rooting. That Drew Olson always says it. He's rooting for the best story. He wants a great story out of a game or covering a team. That's what his job is to find the best stories, which don't necessarily coincide with winning and or losing. It ends up being the best story. In talk radio, many times the fruit is juicier when teams are struggling because fans are angry. They want a coach or they want this or how come they're not drafting better. Yet Wayne, I've never lost it. I want the Packers to win. I've been a fan my whole life. I grew up in the shadows in Appleton. I've been here my whole professional and youth has always been spent here as a fan of the Packers. So for me, it's just fun when they win, and we'll find plenty to talk about. But this team, and that's why I give so much credit to Brian Gutekunst, Mark Murphy, Brian Gutekunst, Russ Ball, what they have done then through Matt LaFleur and company, because I think the work that has been going on in Green Bay for most of my adult life has been fantastic.
Yeah, you look at the last 30 years, I don't know if there's been a run quite like it. I think you can count on one hand the number of times the Packers actually missed the playoffs or thereabouts. If not one hand, then maybe one hand and an extra digit or two. But that's a run that I've nenever seen. They've had two Hall of Fame quarterbacks. We don't know where Jordan Love is going, but he's certainly heading on that trajectory. This is an incredible run that they put together in the smallest city in the NFL to get it done. And you look at and folks, it's not that easy. Okay. Every year the Jacksonville Jaguars go into the system with the most money to spend in free agency, and they spend it and don't get it done. The Bears have been trying and trying and trying to put things together, and they haven't recovered since firing Lovie Smith. But it's just amazing that the Packers have been able to stay competitive at this level.
Wayne, the Green Bay is 10-4. They're looking up in the division at two teams ahead of them, both Minnesota and Detroit at 12-2. They'll play Minnesota not next, but the week after next. What do you see as you have looked at them and even in talking with Larry and John? What is it that the Packers can do and maybe must do better to be able to put together a finish and then a run in January? What are they not doing now or not doing as good as they must do it if they're going to win next month?
Well, the obvious thing, especially 3 weeks ago, you would say would be pressure on the quarterback, but they've kind of amped that up a little bit, and they're starting to do that much better. They've got to continue to take the ball away. Turnovers have not come as easily as they did earlier in the year. Forget about easy, as often as they did earlier in the year. I think they've really, they've done a great job in so many areas that, Mike, there's just no reason to think they can't make a run. Now, if you look at the teams above them, all right, let's just look at this from a power structure in the NFL. Philadelphia, Kansas City, Buffalo, Detroit, Minnesota. They're on one level, okay? On the very next level and not far behind are the Packers, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh. After that, the next rung is Denver, Rams, Texans, and after that, you've got the Commanders, Chargers, and Seahawks. So, those first two tiers may be interchangeable. I understand the Packers lost to Philly, to Detroit twice. They lost to Minnesota. But, boy, I tell you what, there's nothing that leaves me to think they can't beat those teams, and I think they can and will if they get a chance in January.
I'm also really impressed in the division as to how good the coaching is in three of the teams, obviously, the ones who have current permanent head coaches. Dan Campbell is the most different of the group, and we saw that in their onside kick with 12 minutes remaining in the game last week. We saw it against Green Bay on multiple occasions. Kevin O'Connell's on track to win the NFL Coach of the Year, and because nobody thought they were going to be this team, and they continue to be this team. They're 12-2. And I don't know if they still get that credit, but the work being done in the division, which I think is the best division in all of football, is led by 3 really good and different head coaches.
And coaching staffs, Mike. Don't forget, Brian Flores, the job he's doing with that defense, they were very impressive. I understand the Bears season is completely collapsed and cratered, and that team has lost its spirit. And once, if you lose your spirit, you're going to lose the game. But in Detroit, there are 2 great coordinators, Ben Johnson, and he'll be a head coach next year, maybe Aaron Glenn as well. They've done great work. The Packers coaching staff has been outstanding. What Hafley's done as he brings along that defense with his new assistant coaches under him has been, I think, is going to be remarkable. Within 3 weeks, we'll be saying that. And offensively, what Matt LaFleur has done with that offense, he and Adam Stenovich, you've got great coaching there. And the Bears kind of fell short in that department. But the thing that I thought got the Bears, and somebody, maybe it was Troy Aikman was mentioning this, they have Caleb Williams. They put all these toys around him and a lot of great players around him at wide receiver. They had a good tight end, all this stuff. But what they weren't able to address with their resources was the offensive line. And why? Because it takes time to build an offensive line. And an offensive line is something you grow. You don't necessarily acquire. You might acquire a piece or two, but you grow the offensive line. And they didn't do that. And their defensive line is not very good as well. And if you're not good in the trenches, you're not good, period.
Yeah, and, Larry visits on this, and certainly he watches it. But the Packers' offensive line, all of it is built. I mean, essentially none of it is acquired. And that Green Bay offensive line, they don't get talked about. I always think when an offensive line doesn't get talked about, it's like an umpire not getting talked about. That means they're doing their job, right? Because if you're talking about them too much, they're not doing well.
Yeah, no question about it. And we've had some great offensive lines here. I could think back to the Clifton Tauscher line with Marco Rivera, Mike Wall inside, and Mike Flanagan. And then you put Amon Green running behind that line. That was a power line. That was a physical power line. Mike Sherman was the head coach. There wasn't a whole lot of creativity offensively, and Brett Favre was the creativity on his own. But, that was power. And then, the McCarthy lines, we had some very good athletic lines there, smaller people doing different things in the West Coast offense. I'm not quite sure where we are with this offensive line. It's interesting because there's going to be a piece every year. There's a piece or two that changes and is gone. But boy, they're very much a collection of parts. The sum of the collection is better than any single player. There's no one, in my opinion, of the caliber of David Bakhtiari on this line.
Correct.
In his heyday. Okay.
Yeah.
Or even, some of the other guys you talk about. But they're, as a group, they're very good. And they're playing better and better. And that's, I think, going into the playoffs, the interior is so important. I see a lot of physicality on the defensive side. I see it on the offense as well. And that running back can make an offensive line look good too. And I think they've got a good combination there.
So you've never done this because nobody in the league has ever done this. Coming up on Monday night, it will be the 4th consecutive primetime night game for the Green Bay Packers, and no team since they've gone to these types of formats have ever played
not the Cowboys
night games. Nobody.
Wow.
Yeah, because the Packers went Thursday night, Sunday night, Monday night. It's not happened in the league. And I know the players don't love it. What about broadcasters? You kind of hanging around all day. You got time to kill, too much time to kill, maybe. What's that view of waiting around for a 7:20 kick?
Well, if it's up to Larry and I, all these kicks would be at noon, high noon. And, you get up, you go to the game, and you go home. That's what it would be. But as Mark Murphy said, if you're playing a lot of noon games, you're not very good.
Not very good. That's right. So that'll be fun on against New Orleans on Monday night, and then a trip to Minnesota, and the season ends with a home game against Chicago. That game, day and time, is undetermined at this point. So what about that? Let's talk about the next two in particular. New Orleans has struggled, obviously, with health at the quarterback position after Derek Carr went out. So what do you get against New Orleans coming up on Monday? Early week look at that one.
Yeah, I just started looking at tape on them. They're actually very good defensively. They have good personnel, and they're playing well. They're playing very well under Darren Rizzi, the interim head coach, after they fired Dennis Allen. They're 3-2 with him. They could have won the game against Washington. They really handled Washington defensively. So this is an impressive defense. This is going to be – I understand fans think the Packers should blow this team out. Maybe they will. But this is a good football team, and despite the 5-9 record, they're playing well right now. And that's the thing I try to impress upon people, especially at this time of year. Mike, it's not about the numbers for the season. It's about what are you doing in the last 3 weeks. Larry and I look at trends at this time of season. We're not going to look at numbers over the course of the regular season. They may be 20th against the scoring defense over the whole season. But right now, maybe they're 10th in the league over the last month. And that's the team you're playing. You're not playing the team that's 20th in the league in scoring, that kind of thing. So that's what we look at. And the Saints are trending a little bit better there. The Minnesota Vikings, I was thinking we're going to hit. I thought they were playing the best of anybody in October. Yeah. And I thought, wow, that's going to be hard for them to sustain it. I think they have. And they're very good. And isn't it ironic that they are in control of their own destiny to win the division? How about that?
Yeah, nobody saw that coming. And that, even though it's a week and a half, almost 2 weeks from now, there's a game obviously before that. But that has turned into one of the great home field advantages in football. The atmosphere at U.S. Bank is special. And maybe people might consider Vikings fans to be front runners, but they're running from the front right now. So they're in a good spot. It's a really good team, well coached, and a really tough place to play that the Packers will get on December 29th.
Yeah, I tell you what, Mike, we're going to be ready for the playoffs. The Packers are going to get to the playoffs, folks. But if they have to go on the road, they'll be well prepared because we played in some tough spots. Seattle, Minnesota, Detroit. Is there anything tougher than that? Maybe Kansas City, I guess, but we don't have to worry about the AFC until next year, right?
That's exactly right. Until New Orleans, maybe play an AFC team in New Orleans when this season comes to a close. Wayne, this is fun. I'll see you up at Lambeau on Monday night, but also just an early wish to you and your family for a very Merry Christmas and the happy holidays. Appreciate all that you do and all that you do for us at the game. It's good to have you on air with us. We won't do this next week or the week after, but we'll reconvene that first full week of January and do this again.
That sounds great, Mike. All the best to you and Kari and your family for the holiday season as well.
Thank you. That's the voice of the Green Bay Packers, Wayne Larrivee. Packers and New Orleans Saints coming up Monday.